future. And she burst out in tears again. And I said, what's wrong, honey? Finally she says, hermano, brother, I am a Latter-day Saint, but I am just a poor, brown, Indian woman. I am not worth $100. Her sense of self was so low, even with the gospel, with her vision of her future as a daughter of Heavenly Father. In this life, she was just dirt. She just felt so worthless. Well, our student friends kind of helped encourage her, and she finally took the money out of my hand. And a year later, when I saw her, she had like 600 chickens. And she had this business. And the last time I heard from somebody, they said she had 5,000 chickens. She was making $300 a month. Before that, she was making $12 a month. So that's the power of this stuff. Help expanded, spread to other schools, to other countries. Help is in 13 countries now. About 2,300 students have gone down, doing all kinds of work. Help does not do as much microfinance now, but we try to do a more holistic approach to development. We do a lot of micro-enterprise training. All right, so here's another case. Mentors International. Started as, that's of course, I mentioned it in my 1989-90 OB course with a handful of students. And the reason we decided to try something and do our first class NGO in the Philippines was because the Philippines had dropped from being the #2 economy in Asia to being second from the bottom. So from #2 to number 22, so more or less. So we decided to start this little project there. So we've had 22 years or so there now. We've impacted about 3.5 million people's lives, not just those who got loans, but those who benefited from those loans. We raised $44 million over the years. 48,000 got trained last year in microfinance. And here's kind of how, let me share this real briefly here, the steps one goes through to get a loan from this organization. You find somebody through marketing meetings and stuff like that. You find people who may be interested. Then you assess their needs and determine whether or not, this is another NGO, this is not HELP, this is Mentors International. They check creditworthiness if they can. And then they meet one-on-one and mentor that person and help them decide or define their objectives, what kind of business, what kind of service, what kind of product they could offer, okay? And then they decide what kind of operation they want to generate and what kind of outcomes they hope to receive. And from there it goes into, we hook them up with the client resource, or service system rather, and they either say, yeah, they want to move forward, further on it. We got all kinds of technology here, one of my students did this, it's a little too fancy for me. But basically what we do is say, we work to create partner organizations. So we don't go into Philippines or other countries right now and work with existing MFIs like Finca. Instead, we create new startups in those countries that are independent but affiliated with mentors. And each of them has their own board, their own staff. We fund them to get them started. And in the process, we try to help them move towards self-reliance. So for the poor in those countries, Mentors is a big resource system, skills and training and money. And that benefits them. But we've also discovered that those in the U.S. or other industrialized countries or developed nations, they have a huge, meaningful experience in their lives as they begin to assist people that are so poor they've never even known about them. They were not aware in the U.S. many times how much impoverishment there is there. So Mentor says we're not out to give handouts. We're out here to give a hand up, and we're specifically focusing on, there's about 2% of the world lives on an income of $54 a day. It's like one couple of these have not here. 68% live on $4 a day. So Mentors microloans, which now average about $215 per loan, and loan cycles are about 4 months, we're getting a pretty impressive 98, almost 99% payback rates. And each one of our staff in the Philippines, when we started, they only had 10 or 15 clients each. Today they have 500 clients each. So that's a lot of recruiting and mentoring and managing of people's loans. But that's helped us reduce our costs per loan. It used to cost us $80 to do a $100 loan with our overhead, computers, travel, staff, expenses, salaries, all that stuff. And it just kept growing. And we've created other organizations in El Salvador, such as OSTAR here, who used to make $150 a month as a salesman. Then he got a loan from us, started his own business, doubled his income, and finally we hired him to help run our program in El Salvador. We're in Peru so each of these countries has its own little MFI that we fund money to. Here's the numbers of per year. Since, the first decade it was pretty minimal, but you can see a pretty good trajectory of growth here. You can see, like in Mexico, where we created Fundación Dignidad. People like Jorge has had a huge improvement in his life, starting with a $400 loan. He now has monthly income of $450, which is a huge change. These are the sorts of training seminars we offer to larger groups, not just our clients. There's jobs created annually, numbers of loans. In many cases, Mentors is giving a loan to somebody who already has tried a little business. They just can't grow it because they can't get gas and grow it. They can't buy more raw material or whatever. These are some of our partners. The cost per client you can see from $249 to $49. Repayment rates growing. We're exploring other sources. Here's a number of other NGOs and organizations that have been spun out of my classes or with my friends or with students. The newest one is Sustain Haiti. We started working in Léogâne after the terrible 2010 earthquake that killed 360,000 people. Questions, comments? Do these things make sense to you? And I should probably mention, we're not just doing this kind of work in other countries, we're doing it right here in Provo. If some of you speak Spanish, if some of you are interested in this stuff, consider joining Micro Business Mentor. You can Google that, apply online. We have about a dozen students working in this little lab here in the Marriott School where we teach in Spanish. Latino folks in our community, many of them are immigrants. They're struggling to survive, and we help them with $500 loans. You might think, here's the services we offer. Training, group support, mentoring, and préstamo, the most important word, loans, okay? And you might think, how can they possibly do anything with $500? But this woman here from Guatemala, I remember her business. She got her loan. She said, she Latter-day Saint, 3 kids, husband's a returned missionary. They immigrate to Utah to have a better life. And then he leaves her and leaves the church. And she's struggling. Moving from place to place, getting a place for a month or two to rent. She makes some kind of initial payment, then she can't pay the rest of the rent. They kick her out. She has to go someplace else. And she got a $500 loan. And she said, I'm going to be a salon operator. I didn't even know what that was. Has something to do with hair, and as you can see, I don't really understand that culture. But when she explained the barbershop, then I realized. And I said, wow, how can you do a barbershop with 500? She said, I'll be back in a month. After we gave her the month, she took off. She went and bought 2 huge kind of suitcases. And in one of them, she had combs and creams and lotions and dyes and a frock, you know, you put over when you go to the party or the salon. And then the other one, she had clippers and scissors and other stuff. She became a walking barbershop. And she started downtown, right by the Tabernacle, in some areas of low-income families, Hispanic families. And from that part of downtown, she moved south and west. And she started making $10, $20 a week, then $40 or $50 a week, then $100 a week. Pretty soon her business was growing. She paid off her first loan. We gave her $1,000. She bought all that stuff for her sister, and her sister became her business partner. And essentially these two, one-on-one women, go around town, knock on doors, and say, hi, does anyone here need a haircut today? For kids, it's $2. If there's a man in the house, $5. If a woman, if you need your hair done or your hair cut or dyed or whatever, $10 to $15, depends on what they want it done. It's a miracle to see what happened in her life. Last time I saw her, this was 2002 or 2003, last time I saw her, she had 5 people working with her. She had somebody in Springville, somebody in Orem, another person in Lehigh. And they're mostly just doing barbershops on the streets. Well, there's a bunch of other examples. We're out of time. Unitas is a different kind of case. Check it out online. That organization said, we're not going to give loans, we're going to accelerate compliance. We're going to give $1 million to this NGO, maybe more to that one. And that movement took off and became very successful. Last count, and this was started with 3 of my students and a few LDS business people. Last count, I left about 5 years ago. But at that point, they had loaned out $200 million. So the power of this microfinance stuff is amazing. Think about it. Look up Muhammad Yunus. He's going to get the Congressional Medal of Honor next month in D.C. I'll be there. He just came to my class, my last semester teaching microfinance. We had a session with him last week. It was a great lesson. Students walked out saying, I don't know what it must have been like for people who met Gandhi. Somebody else said, no, it's like, I felt like I was in the presence of Martin Luther King. This guy is amazing. This movement is huge. It has problems, it has difficulties. We sometimes promise way too much. Sometimes we don't manage the details. Sometimes these MFIs are more interested in ratcheting up the loan rates, the interest rate percentage. Or some that charge 80% now. And they're trying to get the big banks into this. I'm hoping it stays more of a humanitarian effort and that young people like you can see the way you can make a difference in the world. Thanks a lot. Good to be here.